Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2023-24 season. My name is Dan and we have got new information about double and blank game weeks coming up very soon that I'm going to share with you today. Guys, if you enjoy the work I've put into today's video, make sure you drop a like, do subscribe if you are new around here as well and you want more double and blank game week information. But I think we get cracking and see what's going on. Okay, so first of all, just a quick look at the FPL calendar. You may have seen me show this graphic before, or at least a previous version of this graphic on this channel over the last week or so. But I'm just going to run you through some of the key dates to keep an eye on. So first of all, game week 25, that is going to be a mini double game week. We know about that already. Man City versus Brentford has already been confirmed for that game week, so they are going to have a double there, but there could be more. In game week 26, we're going to have a blank due to the EFL Cup final. So obviously we do have Liverpool and Chelsea in the final, which means they are not going to be available to play at the weekend for that game week. Moving on to game week 29, this is going to be the biggest blank game week of the season. It's going to be huge. There is no chance of fixtures moving to the midweek because the midweek slot in game week 29 is an international break. So we're going to see a lot of blanks, and I'm going to share with you exactly who is likely and who is unlikely to blank in that game week. Moving on, we've got game week 34, which is pretty interesting because there's a small chance we could see one or two blanks in there. But also we're going to see a lot of double game weeks, a lot of double game week fixtures in game week 34 as well. And finally, game week 37 is going to be the final double game week of the season. There could be some other mini double game weeks here and there around all of these game weeks as well. But these are the key dates. These are the big ones. Game week 25, 34 and 37 for your blanks, 26 and 29, and maybe a little bit in 34 for your blanks. So let's have a look and see what is going on. So, of course, we've got the FA Cup fixtures. They have been announced. This is going to be the round of 16 for the FA Cup. These are who is playing who, basically. Now, I am recording this before the Manchester United versus Newport County game has finished. So, yeah, I will update this graphic depending on what the result is from that game. But these are your results. And clearly, you can see that a lot of the Premier League teams are actually playing lower league teams, which is going to make way for possibly a lot of blanks because we do expect the Premier League teams to probably beat the teams at the lower divisions. You probably expect that. There will be a few upsets, but generally speaking, that is a good idea to work off of. A couple of Premier League clashes, Wolves versus Brighton, which is interesting, and Luton versus Man City, though you do expect Man City to beat Luton in the round of 16 in the FA Cup. So, with all of this said, with all of these fixtures coming up in the FA Cup, what does that mean for FPL? Well, let's see. So first of all, I will share with you this graphic, which is the graphic I'm actually working off to kind of work out who's going to blank and who's going to double and when they can blank and when they can double. I think this is maybe a little bit confusing to use as a graphic for you guys, but I did want to share it with you anyway. I may as well show you this just so to show you my workings a little bit of where the doubles and blanks might come up. But I think we can simplify this graphic just a little bit. And here we go. This looks a lot nicer, doesn't it? Much, much simpler. And here we have our double and blank game week teams as well as the fixture difficulty. So you can see from this graphic certain teams do have double game weeks but also have some nice fixtures around it. So you can see, for example, Manchester City looking really nice on their row there. They've got nice fixtures against Burnley, Brentford, Everton, then a double game week against Chelsea and Brentford, and then they've got Bournemouth after that as well. So no blanks all the way until game week 29 for Manchester City. So that's looking very, very good there. Liverpool, similar situation. They have got kind of tough fixtures against Chelsea and Arsenal. After that, Burnley, then a double game week. So really nice period to jump in on Liverpool players, you know, going double up, triple up on Liverpool for the game week 24 to 25 period. But then, of course, Liverpool are blanking in game week 26. That is because, of course, they are playing in the League Cup final. So they are not going to be available to play in game week 26. Even the midweek slot in game week 26, Liverpool can't play there because of their FA Cup fixture that is going to take place in game week 26 midweek slot. So yeah, that's kind of interesting there. So Liverpool and Luton, these are the two only teams that are basically confirmed to have blanked. A few people might say, okay, well, isn't the Chelsea versus Spurs game, can't that technically also be a blank? Well, yeah, we've already seen that the Premier League have announced, or FPL in particular, have announced that Game Week 26 is going to be a blank for Chelsea and Spurs, because obviously Chelsea are in the League Cup final, but there is still a chance that actually that game, Chelsea versus Spurs, can move to the midweek slot of Game Week 26. So just postpone just a few days and it will play there instead. And the way that will happen is if Chelsea lose to Aston Villa in the FA Cup fourth round replay. I know it's getting pretty confusing here. So I do think we need to simplify this graphic even more, because although it's nice to see the fixture difficulty, what we really care about today is who's going to be doubling and who's going to be blanking. And I think we can show you that by stripping away a lot of this magical colour that I love so much, but maybe isn't always so useful. So how about this, guys? This is much simpler, really, isn't it? We can see who is doubling, who is blanking, who is most likely to double, who is most likely to blank. So let's go through this game week by game week, starting off in game week 25. So in game week 25, we already know Brentford and Man City have a confirmed double game week. Brentford will be playing against Liverpool and Man City, so a pretty tough one for them, but a double game week nonetheless. And Man City playing against Chelsea and Brentford. 2 games at home. I think that could be pretty nice. And if we're looking at a good opportunity for a triple captain, I think game week 25 is definitely up there. Now, with Liverpool's busy fixture schedule, you know, they're in the final of the EFL Cup. They've made it through in the FA Cup. They are still in Europe as well. They have a lot of kind of booked up midweek slots. You know, in the future, they're going to have a lot of midweek slots already occupied by their game. So it's going to be difficult to schedule in a kind of, you know, this Luton versus Liverpool game. You know, meant to happen in game week 26. It's not going to happen in game week 26. They're both going to be blanking there. So it needs to fit in somewhere. Later on in the season is too difficult. So when is the best opportunity to place that fixture? Well, it is in game week 25. So Liverpool versus Luton will very likely, incredibly likely, is to happen within the game week 25 midweek slot. So Liverpool will have a double game week against Brentford and Luton will have a double game week against Manchester United and Liverpool. Kind of a little bit of a tough one for Luton, but certainly Liverpool, you are looking at that fixture and licking your lips, because that does look like a really nice double. So straight away, you look at this game week and you're thinking, this is a good opportunity for a chip. We've got a few decent teams, Manchester City and Liverpool in particular. Both of these teams are going to be doubling, or very likely to be doubling in Liverpool's case. So you want to play a chip here. Triple captain is very much on the cards here. We look at Haaland for this double game week. I mean, you'd expect him to be fit by then. Salah, if he's available. These two players look really nice. If you're going to triple captain a player, you want it to be the likes of Haaland or Salah, don't you? So straight away, Game Week 25 jumps out as an amazing triple captain opportunity. Now, that's not the only kind of option there for you. You could also maybe opt for a free hit. If you find yourself with no Liverpool players, no Man City players, and you do also want to benefit from maybe Brentford, maybe a Tony up front in your FPL team, you could play a free hit for Game Week 25 only. That actually will be beneficial for Game Week 26, because when we move on into Game Week 26, you can see Liverpool are very likely to be blanking as well. So that's going to be a really interesting one. Now, I wouldn't set anything in stone with regards to the free hit for these 2 game weeks. It's probably not optimum to play your free hit here. I do prefer the triple captain for Game Week 25, because I think later on in the season there will be more opportunities, better opportunities in fact, for a free hit. But straight away we can see Game Week 25, good opportunity for a chip. More than likely, that is going to be a triple captain chip. Now, have a quick look here at Chelsea and Spurs, because there is a small chance, and just a small chance, mind you, that Chelsea and Spurs have their kind of postponed game from Game Week 26 rescheduled into Game Week 25. Now, I don't think there's a huge chance of that happening. I think it's more than likely that that's going to happen later on in the season, whereby these 2 teams play, but particularly if Aston Villa were to if Aston Villa maybe like lost to Chelsea, then I think Game Week 25 maybe becomes an opportunity for Chelsea Spurs to go in 25. In Game Week 26, however, it's kind of the reverse. The inverse is kind of true. So if we do see that Aston Villa beat Chelsea, then maybe Chelsea can fit in the midweek slot in Game Week 26. So although previously Chelsea versus Tottenham would have been a blank, actually, if Chelsea get knocked out of the FA Cup in their replay against Villa, well, maybe that fixture can go into Game Week 26. But I still do think that is very unlikely, because if Chelsea do get knocked out of the FA Cup, the fact that Chelsea and Spurs, you know, they'll both be knocked out of all cups, you know, no Europe either, that is going to mean that it's pretty easy actually to reschedule Chelsea and Spurs games for later on in the season. So we've got the likes of game week 34, game week 37. These two game weeks are the kind of designated game weeks where there's no clashes, there's no European football going on in the midweek, there's no cup games going on in the midweek. These are your pre-designated game weeks where we expect to see double game weeks happen. Those are the midweek slots that we expect to see teams have their double game weeks in. So Spurs and Chelsea, even if Aston Villa were to beat Chelsea, I wouldn't hold your breath on game week 26 because that fixture would still be pretty easy to schedule later on in the season. And I think the Premier League will prefer to do that later in the season if possible. But it is still a possibility, guys, remember this, there's still a possibility that even though Spurs versus Chelsea has been advertised as a blank game week in game week 26, there is still a chance that it happens. A small chance, but regardless, there's still a chance. Now, game week 27 and 28 are kind of interesting. I've already kind of earmarked these game weeks as potential for the postponed Bournemouth, Luton versus Bournemouth game, Bournemouth versus Luton game. Obviously, that was postponed a few weeks ago, or maybe a month ago now, and obviously a lot of people were upset because it was the game week where Solanke's goal was chalked off because that game was kind of abandoned, but that game needs to be rescheduled somewhere, and it looks pretty possible that actually in game week 27 or 28 this could happen. Now, that does clash with European football, but of course, Bournemouth and Luton, they're not in Europe, so it doesn't matter to them. And I don't think it will be too much of a problem to schedule this fixture in here. One, because it's the European, it's like earlier on in European fixtures. So like not as many people will be watching European games. It's not like as high profile. And also, because I think it's a low-profile game in general, like Luton versus Bournemouth, it's kind of a low-profile game. I think there'll be no problems with having this fixture kind of played alongside the Champions League, Europa League kind of games, playing kind of at the same time. A Thursday looks more than likely. But yes, certainly game week 27 or 28, that could be the time where, you know, we see Bournemouth in particular, we'd be looking at Bournemouth with Solanke, you know, either having a double game week of Burnley and Luton or Sheffield United and Luton. Now, can you imagine if that was the case? You would really want to make sure you had Solanke for game week 27 or 28. And I'm not saying it's super likely, but these two game weeks are very possible, and I think these are the first opportunities really for Bournemouth versus Luton to be rescheduled into the midweek. Game week 27 or game week 28. Watch this space because I think it could happen. And finally, of course, guys, we do have game week 29, which is yeah, it's not looking great. I'm not going to lie to you guys. So far, the only teams that are guaranteed to play in game week 29 are Brentford, Burnley, Fulham, and Spurs. That is not a whole bunch of teams, to be fair, is it? Just 4 teams at this moment. Of course, if Manchester United get knocked out by Newport, that changes a little bit. The big problem here is, of course, we're not actually going to find out for sure who is blanking in game week 29 until after the game week 26 deadline. So it's really good now to get an idea because, particularly if you don't want to free hit in game week 29, and you could free hit in game week 29 to try and, you know, cover all of these blanks that are very likely to happen in this week. But I think there's definitely an opportunity to actually not free hit at all in game week 29 and actually just start removing players who are likely to blank in 29 and then look to wildcard in 30 or 31. Now, if you've already used your wildcard or you're planning on using your wildcard soon, then maybe that's not going to be so easy. But certainly game week 29, you're looking at a possible free hit. More than likely, though, you're looking at a wild card in 30 or 31. So removing those players who are likely to blank and then bringing them back in game week 30 or 31. You know, you're looking to maybe sell the likes of Salah, sell the likes of Haaland for game week 29, and then game week 30 or 31, you bring those players straight back into your FPL team. But I do want to focus a little bit more on game week 29. So let's just have a look at it in isolation now. So I've tried to simplify this even more and just kind of split these games into 3 categories. A likely fixture, a possible fixture, or an unlikely fixture. So we can kind of see what we will be picking from in game week 29. What kind of players we would be picking from. So guys, straight away, we can see Burnley, Brentford, Spurs, Forest, Luton, Fulham. You know, these teams are very likely that we are going to see them play in game week 29. But that's kind of slim pickings. We're only really looking at Brentford and Spurs from those kind of main teams that we like to pick from in FPL. Maybe you've got a cheeky Charlie Taylor from Burnley, possibly. But yeah, in general, it's really the only big team who is like gonna play in Gameweek 29 is Spurs. Now, there are some other opportunities, so we could either, it depends out of Chelsea and Aston Villa who goes through in their replay. We'll find that information out by the Game Week 24 deadline, who's going to go through out of Aston Villa or Chelsea. And that's going to leave two different scenarios. We're either going to see Arsenal versus Chelsea being played in Game Week 29, or we're going to see West Ham versus Aston Villa being played in Game Week 29. It's going to be one or the other. So we are going to see the likes of Arsenal, Chelsea, and Aston Villa and West Ham players, to be fair. They're all possibly going to be available to us. Wouldn't be quite selling those players yet, but certainly keep an eye on those. Keep an eye on that game after the Game Week 23 deadline, and after that we can kind of see who is the priority players to keep. Is it Arsenal and Chelsea players, or is it Aston Villa and West Ham players? Which players are the ones we want to keep? After that, we've got a couple other teams. It looks like Manchester United versus Sheffield United. There is still an okay chance of that fixture going ahead in Game Week 29 at time of recording. It's kind of a little bit up in the air, though. Not completely convinced. It's probably, if Manchester United, go through the next couple of rounds, then obviously they're going to be blanking. But aside from those teams, it's really not looking great. It's really not looking great. I would not expect Bournemouth, Brighton, Crystal Palace, Everton, Liverpool, Man City, Newcastle, or Wolves to be playing in Game Week 29. So we're looking at half of the Premier League basically not having a fixture in Game Week 29. It is going to be a low-scoring game week. I would be absolutely fine to play with 9 or 10 men in that game week as well if I felt I needed to. It's just going to be a rough game week for everyone. Everyone's going to be in the same boat. But what we can do now is start looking and saying, okay, I need to make sure I'm not overloading on teams who are likely to blank in 29. I need to, maybe not quite yet, but certainly soon, we'll start to offload the likes of Liverpool and Man City players, as long as you are not planning a free hit in Game Week 29. So that is definitely something that we do need to consider. So where does that leave us in terms of strategy? Well, for me personally, right now, what I am thinking is Game Week 25, we want to play a triple captain. In Game Week 30 or 31, we want to play a wild card. And if we're going to do those things, we need to be aware of what's going on in 26 and 29. If you are picking up a lot of Liverpool, Chelsea, Spurs players, Luton players, maybe cool off a little bit with all of those teams other than Liverpool, because we want Liverpool for the double in 25, but what we don't want is to have too many Chelsea and Spurs players alongside them. So if you do have triple Liverpool by Game Week 25, I think that's absolutely fine. You can put those 3 Liverpool players on your bench in Game Week 26, but if you find that you've also got loads of Spurs, loads of Chelsea, then we are going to see some problems in Game Week 26. So be aware that you might have to play with less men. And you do want to ideally avoid using a free hit in Game Week 26, in my opinion. I think there's going to be better opportunities later on, but it is possible. It is possible if you are already heavily invested in Spurs and Chelsea, and you want to be heavily invested in Chelsea and Spurs in particular, then perhaps there is going to be, a situation where you have to use your free hit in Game Week 26. So be aware of that. Try not to corner yourself, I guess, into specific strategies. We're still a little bit early in chip season. It doesn't mean we can't be on the lookout. Game Week 27 and 28, I would be making sure you have an idea of how you might get Solanke into your team if you need to, because that's going to be a prime opportunity for a player like that. And Game Week 29, well, hopefully by this point, you will start to gradually, between Game Week 25 and 29, you'll start to reduce the amount of Liverpool and Man City and maybe even Newcastle players that you have in your team, as well as, Aston Villa and West Ham, or Chelsea and Arsenal, depending on how results go. But we can hold off on the Chelsea, Arsenal, West Ham, Aston Villa players right now. Just, I just would advise that maybe you don't overload on Chelsea and Spurs right now. I think that is the biggest takeaway from what we see here, because I think Chelsea and Spurs players are going to cause the biggest issues in Game Week 26, and there's a good chance that Chelsea players cause issues in Game Week 29. So if you've got Cole Palmer, great. If you've got, any more Chelsea players than that, then we could start having some problems here. So yes, guys, that is the basic overview of what is going on in the Premier League right now. When are the doubles likely to be? When are the blanks likely to be? We are gonna, obviously, as time goes on, we get more information. We're gonna solidify this table even more, give you more accurate predictions as we get closer to these doubles and blanks, as well as looking at game week 34 and 37 and seeing what's going to be happening in those game weeks, because that is going to be big opportunities for bench boosts and free hits as well. So stay tuned, guys. We will be covering those later game weeks as well very, very shortly when we get a little bit more information. But for now, guys, these are your blanks, these are your doubles. Hopefully you found this useful, and hopefully you can use this information to start planning out when you're going to be using your chips, what kind of transfers you want to be making, and just being aware of what is going on in the near future of FPL. If you guys enjoyed this one, make sure you do drop a like. Obviously, a lot of work has gone into kind of not just producing these graphics, but also like sitting down and working out what fixtures could go where, what is the most likely outcomes of FA Cup games, looking at odds and stuff like that. Yeah, we put a bit of time into this one, but it's all worth it. Not just for the benefit of you, but it benefits me as well. I like to make these videos to try and give myself a clear idea of what's going on in FPL, and I may as well share it with you guys, right? So yeah, make sure you drop a like if you appreciate it, the work that went into today's video, guys. Do subscribe if you are new around here as well. You want more FPL content, check out another FPL video if you want to on this channel. But aside from that, thank you so much for watching once again, and I will see you later, mates. Bye bye.